Okay, the homework for this lab is based on the tragedy of the commons, a very famous article that was published by Garrett Hardin in 1968. And it's really good, and you should read the article. So it's talking about the tragedy of the commons. The idea being that, you know, if I'm a cattleman and I put one extra cow on the land, then I get the benefit of this extra cow, the full benefit. Whereas the negative effects are overgrazing, but those negative effects are shared in the common. And so you get the benefit without considering the negative effects because they seem to be dispersed throughout the common set of resources. Okay, and so the questions that follow this, number one asks what's the take-home message, that we can't just assume that our actions are not making an impact because we're just one little person, but if everybody feels the same way, then everybody is hurting the environment. So the number two kind of points this out, that if you add one cow to your herd, then the positive is a full +1. The negative is overgrazing, but it's shared with everybody else who uses that field to graze, and so your negative is only partially a partial part of -1. And so it asks them to explain this concept in terms of their personal use of a vehicle. And it's the same idea, right? We drive our big SUV all over the place and we think, well, you know, the benefit to me is that I have a great vehicle that I'm driving around. The detriment is that I'm polluting the environment, but do I feel directly the effects of my vehicle on the environment? And no, I don't, because it's a common area that we all pollute into, and so I don't necessarily feel that same detriment as I'm putting out there. And so, but if everybody feels the same way, then we end up with a compounded problem. Number 3 and 4. Number 3, Darwin has a very, and this is Darwin, the grandson of Darwin. Darwin has a very interesting argument. The idea being that if you are one who thinks that we should preserve and protect the environment, and if let's say that that's genetic, so we don't want to overpopulate, we don't want to overuse our environment, all the things that we're trying to do to protect the environment tend to lead to less offspring, so it's a less fit thing. And so those who don't necessarily care, and he's talking about population control now, you know, there's various opinions on that, but the idea being that those who don't care and overproduce are the ones that are going to pass their genes on, right? So it's an argument. I'm not saying whether it's a good one or a bad one, but that's the argument that Darwin was making. Hardin then kind of puts a little bit of a positive spin on it, and he talks about education, that education, understanding conservation issues is what can help, but that education has to be constantly refreshed. And so the question asks, what does he mean by this and how can we gain this education? So the idea being that we need to keep educating people on these conservation issues, because let's say it's not genetic, that it really is a learned behavior. We need to make sure that people are people who aren't necessarily biologists, people who are in the public eye, people who are in politics who are going to be making decisions are the ones that are educated on this topic. And then number 5 says, Hardin claims freedom in the commons brings ruin to all. And so this is an opinion statement. They get to agree or disagree with this statement, and they just need to justify it. The 6 through 10 has them go and calculate their carbon footprint. So this is just, it's going to be different depending on the individual, but it gives them an idea of the things that they're doing that produces a larger carbon footprint, and things that they can do to reduce their carbon footprint. So they're just supposed to do this as an exercise. There's, again, no right or wrong answer here, but just to get students to think about an issue that tends to be one that our students shy away from. And so we just want them to seriously consider it. It's not, you're not trying to shove tree hugging down their throat or anything like that. You're just trying to help them understand what the issues actually are, what the data actually says, so that they will be a little bit more aware and less ignorant in their decisions that they make. And that's the homework, and that's the end of this lab.